Hi everybody, welcome back to the TETRIX RoboBench video series. This is Tim from Pittsco Education. Today's RoboBench, I want to talk to you about the TETRIX MAX Gripper kit. We kind of took some of the feedback that we had on the TETRIX Prime Gripper kit, and we decided that we really needed to make one scaled more toward the Max system. So that's what we've done. You'll see an example of it right here. But let's talk a bit about how it comes. And this is the package that it comes in. You get everything you need to complete the gripper is in this bag except for the servo. So you're always going to already either have to get a servo or have a servo on hand, standard servo, to go ahead and complete this gripper kit. Let's talk about some of the features. Again, this is scaled up from the Prime Gripper kit, but it's based on the same type of a design, a parallelogram. As you can see that as I move that gripper in and out, the jaws, the surfaces on the gripping on the inside stay parallel. So that's what we're doing with this parallelogram based on these arms. Again, the idea is that that allows for a little bit more efficient gripping system, not as likely to squeeze things out of the jaws if they were just attached on this one pivot point. So again, a parallelogram. It's more robust than the Prime Gripper kit in the fact that, again, we've got a little bit more meat on the jaws. We added some support rails on the inside here so that you can actually grip larger objects, a little bit larger range of motion both in and out. We've added this curve, so again, is a little bit more conducive to gripping a round object, but we maintain the flat surfaces there, so also will work for that. We've got additional contact points. Again, we've got the TETRIX MAX hole pattern on these jaws, so it makes it a little bit easier to actually attach additional Max pieces, standoffs, whatever we needed to the jaws of this gripper. On this end, we've got a full Max hole pattern here so that we could attach in the different angles that the hole pattern facilitates, and a little bit thicker in the plate itself. So this is, again, scaled a little bit more properly for the Max system, and that whole idea of being a little bit more robust, being able to create larger robots that actually do a little bit more work. In the same way with the gearing mechanism here. We've beefed up those gears so that becomes a little bit more of a positive type of mechanism or connection, again, for more robust applications. So that's kind of what the gripper kit looks like. Some of the features that we make it different from the Prime Gripper. But I'm going to go ahead and actually gather some things up, and we're going to go ahead and put one together. Okay, I've got everything together here, and I've taken it out of the packaging and I've laid it out so we can kind of identify what we need, what we don't need. So I'm going to kind of go through that as we real quick in the front, and then we'll go ahead and start assembling. So let me start with the gripper kit itself. I've got the mounting plate right here that is kind of the heart of what we're going to start building on. I've got two of the jaws. I've got a left and a right side that we'll use to create, again, the jaws. I've got some pivot arms that are identical, 4 of those. And you'll see that they do have an identifying hole on one side, and that's going to be important as we put that together. I'll show how that goes. We've got support rails. We've got 4 of those. And again, these are asymmetrical. They've got one end that has a little bit smaller indent that is going to make a difference on how that actually applies to the jaw. And I'll make sure that I point that out when we put that together. We have the pivot arms with the gear attached that are going to, again, attach to the servo and create that motion. I've got small Phillips head screws, short ones that are used to attach the components to the gripper plate. We've got washers that go with the moving points. And then I've got 4 of the longer Phillips heads that we'll use to attach the servo to the gripper plate. I have a servo. Again, now this does not come with the gripper kit, but I have a servo here that is either, you can get that as part of your TETRIX MAX kit or as an a la carte item. Because this is Max, this is a 485 servo, a standard servo that we would use for that. And then I've got a couple of support items that we'll use through the process. I've got my 2-in-1 Phillips head screwdriver, Phillips number 1 on one side, flat screwdriver on the other. Again, this is important because of the size of the Phillips head. If you use a Phillips head number 1, you're going to be less likely to strip out the screws. So again, that's important. I've got a Prime 6-volt battery mainly to show or demonstrate the centering of the servo, which is important. I'll show you a manual way as well as the automatic way, but just as a battery source, that's an easy way to do that. I've got my gamepad and my receiver, again, to help with that centering action, and then a Sharpie pen to actually show you some of the ways that you can manually center that servo. Last but not least, in the package itself comes this inspiration card that it shows an exploded view of the Max Gripper. Now this can be beneficial. You actually could build the gripper kit from this exploded view. It's got its front and back. It shows a detailed blow up of the actual parts, gives you the names. It doesn't give you step by step, but it kind of gives you that view that if you've had much experience putting things together, you could use this to assemble. So I'm going to set that aside for right now, and we're going to go ahead and start the process. I'm going to start with my servo, and this is the important thing that we need to go over with this from a troubleshooting standpoint. It's very important that you have the servo centered to the neutral position before you start this assembly process in order to get the right range of motion on your jaws. So typically the servo comes from the factory with this white round servo horn attached. We don't need that, but before I take it off, I'm going to show you the manual method of centering this servo, and it's going to be a little easier if I leave that servo horn attached. Now I'm going to take my Sharpie pen and I'm going to make a mark on this servo horn so we can actually see the range of motion. Typically, it comes centered from the factory, but we're going to test that to see. I'm going to put a line right here in the middle, and when I hold that up, and I rotate manually the servo all the way to one side or the other, I should see that I've got it basically in a centered position in equal range of motion, both clockwise and counterclockwise, so that when I come back to the center, you'll see that it's that's where I want to make sure that servo is in position when I assemble my gripper. Now I can do that with my battery and my gamepad and receiver by actually plugging that in. I'm going to go ahead and move this off center so you'll see what happens. But when I attach this servo, let me take my wire off here. I'm going to start with my battery and I'm going to plug that into my wireless receiver. And you'll see that I've got my flashing light that says I've got power on my receiver, but it's flashing because it's not paired to my gamepad. I'll go ahead and connect my servo. Now, when I do that, you'll see that as soon as it gets power, it actually comes back to center. Again, I'm going to take that apart and show you that when I move that to one side and then plug this back in, it should jump back to center position. So now I know my servo is centered, and I can test that by actually turning on my controller. And with my controller on, and I've got my green light that shows it's paired, if I move my joystick, I should be able to get motion on my servo horn. And I can trim that if it's slightly out of center with my trim knob on my gamepad. As I move that trim up and down, get my finger out of the way so you can see the white line, it'll actually cause that servo to move just slightly. So that's the important part in the first. We want to start with that servo horn centered. Once I've done that, I can unplug this. I'm going to set this to the side just for a moment. Turn off my gamepad. And now I'm going to go ahead and start my assembly. First thing I have to do is take that servo horn off. Again, 2-in-1. Now, these screws sometimes come from the factory really tight, and this is one. So before I actually strip that head out, I'm going to go ahead and take this horn off by using an alternate method. So bear with me while I get the tools I need for that. Okay, I've got a couple things that I'm going to allow, again, me to take this off. This has been a little bit of trouble, so I don't need this servo horn. So basically what I'm going to do, take some wire cutters, dikes, something like that, and I'm going to actually cut that off. Just like that. Safety glasses are important so that we don't get anything flying off. Again, we don't need that, so we can just go ahead and take that off. When I've done that and the horn is removed, you'll see that the screw is exposed just enough that I can take a pair of pliers. I can actually get on that screw, and I can then back that screw off without damaging the Phillips head portion of the screw. Once I get it out, it should be loose enough then that my Phillips head will go ahead and take it the rest of the way off. Here we go. So I have that off now. I don't know that you noticed that, but my actual servo did go ahead and move. So I'm going to go ahead and recenter that. Move back in position. I'm centered. Now I'm ready to go. So on my gripper plate, if you'll see that as I hold that up, I've got a front side and a back side. The back side has the 4 standoffs that the servo is going to mount to, and a hole on this side. Servo is going to mount just like that, so that the gear itself shows through the hole. It's kind of important that we make sure that that is basically in the center of that hole. It'll be close if you just mount it as it is, but I'll show you why in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and take the longer 4 Phillips screws and actually go ahead and mount those to my plate. Keep in mind we've got a metal screw going into a plastic body, so we don't want to over tighten these. If you strip this out, you've ruined the gripper plate. So again, you want to be careful as you tighten those down. So I've got my servo mounted in my gripper plate. Now I'm ready to add my gear pivot arms. I'm going to start with by showing you that the difference between the two. There are 2 different sides, a right and a left. The right side is going to go on the servo. You'll see that if you look at them from a profile view, one of them has the boss with the broached gear teeth on the inside that matched up with the servo. So this is the one we're going to start with. This other side, again, no raised boss. It's simply going to act as a pivot against this one. So we'll start with this side. We're going to go ahead and align that so that the gear arm is pointing straight up away. And carefully kind of position that gripper so that the teeth engage. And when you press that onto the plate, you have a range of motion that goes basically from one post all the way over to the other. And you'll see that I'm not quite going where I need to be there in the middle. So I'm going to reposition that. I can actually just move that loose just a little bit and position it just a little bit like that. 1 or 2 teeth difference can make all the difference in the world. And now I have range of motion all the way from one side to the other, just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and fasten this side down. I'm going to take the black servo horn screw that I dropped or removed from the servo initially. Take one of the washers, and I'm going to go ahead and put that side attached. That'll help draw that gear arm down onto the horn and make sure it does not come off. This is again important why you don't want to strip that screw out, because you want to make sure that that's securely. So when I've got that side adjusted and I have my pointing basically straight up, I can put my other gear, and again, you'll notice that I've got a flat surface and a raised boss on the other side. The flat surface is going to go against the plate. Those gears are going to mesh so that the arms again are basically straight up, just like so. And then when I pivot those in, they should meet in the middle. And if they do that, then I know that I've got basically my position correct. So once I have those, I can go ahead and attach the other side with one of the short Phillips screws. Again, with the washer. You always want to use the washers on the pivoting parts to make sure that screw doesn't go down too tight onto the plastic part and then keep it from rotating. And once I have both sides, making sure that they move and meet still in the middle. Now I'm ready to add the other pivot arms. There are, again, 4 of these. They are identical, but again, identifying part is the hole pointed on the outside. We want that hole to be mounted away from the gripper so that if I put that just like this hole is out on this end away from the gripper. That's how all 4 of those will be mounted. But I usually start on one side and assemble one side to the other. That way I know I've taken it side by side. I have the one arm, and again, making sure that it's moving freely. And now I'm ready to attach my jaw, starting with the right side. That's going to align just like that. I'm going to go ahead and use my short Phillips screws to attach that front side. You'll see now that as I rotate that, I've got that parallel motion that this will stay vertical and constant to the other side. Got the front, now I need to go ahead and mount the arm on the back. Again, making sure that the hole is on the outside, just like that. And again, using the short screws with the washers to go ahead and attach those. Now I've got one side that is attached with the pivot arms. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side over here. Again, we have now both arms attached, and you'll see that as I move those in, if I've got everything aligned properly, they meet in the middle and have that gripper actually match up on the end. So again, I've got that parallel action. These stay parallel to each other and vertical. And as I move that in and out, you'll see that that becomes a very even gripping motion. The last thing we need to do is to attach the support rails. This is a little bit of an option for you in case if you decide to go ahead and use another TETRIX pieces, but this will again allow you to have a little bit more gripping surface. I do need to make you aware that these again are asymmetrical. There's this notch on the end. One side is a little bit longer than the other. The short end will go on the outside of the gripper, just like that. And when you put them on, you'll use the short screws, but you don't need a washer because these don't move. So we can go ahead and apply those. There's a front and a back. Here we go. I've got my gripper completely assembled. Now you'll notice I don't have anything left over parts-wise. So you'll know if you've used everything the way that you're supposed to, if there's not anything left over. Again, you've got that gripping motion just like that. The last thing we need to do is go ahead and apply power and test to make sure that it's working correctly. So I've got my wireless receiver and battery. I'm going to go ahead and hook that up. Battery in first, and we'll see if we have our power. Got my flashing light there. Going to apply my servo. Goes to the neutral position. I'm going to go ahead and turn my gamepad on. And then hopefully when I move that in, you'll see that it actually will operate the gripping motion. Now, one thing that I'll go ahead and point out, because you'll notice that my range of motion that I get with my remote control is not as great as the physical possible range of motion through the gripper itself. That is due to the algorithm behind the joystick and what we have there. If you use this with a programmable option like a prism, then you will be able to program that to a full range of motion through this stick itself. But typically, again, because of the built-in safety of the algorithm, it doesn't give you full range of motion. So that's what the gripper would look like. I hope you found that information helpful and beneficial for you so that you can go out and add the TETRIX MAX Gripper to your robots and create, again, some of those wonderful creations we like for you to do. So like we always say, have fun, build some robots, come back and see us.